Good afternoon, Romsey Abbey, and welcome to today's worship. We're going to be continuing our theme of learning through today's worship. Our first worship on the theme of learning was exploring how children with Down syndrome learn. And last week, we thought very carefully and explored how resilience is really important in our learning. And today we're going to be thinking about autism and thinking about how autism affects our learning. So let's start today by lighting our candle and saying our school prayer together. Dear God, as we light our candle, help us to be kind to each other and to do our best. Amen. So I'm going to start today's worship by sharing a PowerPoint presentation with you, which will answer some questions, hopefully, about what autism is. I'm going to share my screen with you. There we go. And we're going to start with the question, what is autism? And has anybody ever heard the word autism before? Some of you may have friends who have autism. Some of you may have family members who have autism. Some people might know a lot about autism, while others don't know very much at all, and that's fine. So autism is a lifelong developmental difficulty that affects how a person communicates with others and how they relate to other people. It can affect how they experience the world around them, and it can also affect their senses. And they might find certain noises or smells or textures really difficult to tolerate. And tolerate means find it really difficult to cope with. And all of our brains work differently. And our brains process senses all the time. And they process things that we can smell, things that we see, things that we hear, things that we touch, things that we taste throughout the day. And some people with autism find that their senses sometimes work on overdrive. And so their senses are really, really effective and working hard. So they might find things that they touch on, they feel much more strongly than other people. So our brain collects information about the world around us, and it gets that information from our senses, what we can hear, see, touch, taste, and smell. But when our brain receives that information, it works out what it all means, and it decides how we react. And there are messages happening all around us all the time. As I'm talking to you now, out of the corner of my eye, I can see the flickering of the candle. And that's a message that my brain is telling me all the time, that it can see that flicker. But if children or people are autistic, they have autism, the noises and the smells and the colours that our brain responds to might be processed a little bit differently. And people with autism get all the information in, but their brain sometimes doesn't know what to do with it. There's just too much information coming in at once. So sometimes sounds that we really enjoy and we like might sound really uncomfortable for children with autism. And it might make them feel really worried or anxious or scared. Those loud noises just might mean their brains can't cope with it and it's all too much. They might find lights or colours or tastes or textures of materials really uncomfortable. Some children with autism only like to wear the same type of clothes all the time because they know how those feel and those feel comfortable on their skin. And some clothes feel so uncomfortable they can't cope with those clothes touching them. And that's because their brain is processing that information very, very differently to other people's. So people with autism still see the world around them, and they can take in too much information, which can be a bit worrying. But also they can be really interested in one thing. And if they're really interested in one thing, then sometimes they might not see the world around them. They might shut off the world around them. And that can sometimes be really strange if one of our friends does that. So if one of our friends is really focused on playing with one thing or playing one certain game, and then they ignore us, we might think, oh, do they not like me anymore? But it's not that at all. It's just the way that their brain is working, that they're processing that information and they're able to focus on one aspect of it. Here it says autism can be thought of as a hidden disability, as we can't always see it, but it affects people's everyday life. So the autistic spectrum, autism is sometimes called a spectrum condition, and that means that although people with an autistic spectrum condition share some of the same difficulties, everybody with the condition is different. So everybody finds different parts of that sensory processing or that ability to focus on one task. It's different. Just like as learners, we're all different. Nobody is the same in their learning. Everybody finds something more difficult than others. And some people with autism might need a little bit of help and support, but others might not need that much support. Some might need a lot of support. And that's just how learners are different. It's a spectrum, depends on how much support you might need. And there are some questions. What do you sometimes need help doing? Does everybody need help doing that? Or is it different to the help that other people need? And what do you feel you're good at? And you feel fine doing without support? Because something that you might be really good at, like building or baking or skating or doing gymnastics, somebody else might need a lot of support to do that. So we're all different in our learning. Some people with autism say the world can feel really overwhelming, that it can make them feel worried or anxious. Some people with autism find it really hard to communicate. They can't find the right words to say to people. They don't know how to make their face look when they're showing different expressions. And they can find it really hard being in a group and joining in with games when there are lots of children playing together. Often a person with autism finds it hard to adapt and change to the world around them. And when things change and they're not expected, that can be really tricky. And home learning wasn't expected. And we're all having to change the way that we're learning. Some of us are learning in school, some of us are learning at home, but there's lots and lots and lots of change. And children with autism might find that really difficult. Some children with autism might find it really nice to be learning from home because it's quiet and there aren't those noises and lights and other people distracting them. Some people with autism find loud sounds and lots of unfamiliar people or crowds really difficult. There are lots of myths about autism, and here are just a few. One myth, some people say autistic people don't feel emotions. We know that's not true. We all feel emotions. People with autism feel emotions just like everybody else. They often don't have the social tools to respond to them in the same way, so they're not quite sure sometimes how to deal with those emotions. All people with autism are good at art, maths, and music. Well, I know some people with autism who are amazing artists. I also know some people with autism who find art really difficult. So, just like any learning, everyone has their own special talents, and we all find different things easy and different things difficult. Some people with autism have extreme intellect or can be really, really talented in one area. This is sometimes because people with autism are really good at practicing one skill and keeping on practicing that one skill. And that can mean that our brain is able to make those connections, just like we learned last week, that to make a connection in the brain, our brain has to practice and practice and practice and practice. And some children with autism find that skill really easy when they're interested in something. All autistic children go to special educational needs schools. No, not at all. Most autistic children go to normal mainstream schools. Some might go to special schools, but which can give them more support, but it very much depends on their learning. And that's the same as everybody. Everybody is different in their learning. So here are some facts about autism that you might be really interested in. Routines can be really important to someone affected by autism. It can help them feel in control in an environment that's a bit difficult, that's different, that's overwhelming. Repetitive behaviours like rocking or tapping can help someone with autism feel more comfortable. So some children with autism will see them doing the same thing over and over again, and that's a comfort. It's helping them feel secure. Some autistic people are able to learn lots and lots about a topic they like. And this could be anything: art, dinosaurs, reading, space, doesn't matter. So how can you help? Well, you can help like you would help anybody. You can be caring if someone is having difficulty understanding. You can stick to promises and plans. So if you say you're going to do something and play with a friend, if you then don't play with them at playtime, they might find it really difficult to understand why. You can explain quietly and calmly to others if they don't understand. And I know this next point nobody in Romsey Abbey would do. We would never make jokes or tease people. Someone with autism might not understand the joke, or they might get really upset. And teasing somebody is not kind, irrespective of their learning. We always use kind words at Romsey Abbey. It might help you to think about if noises are very loud and someone puts their hand over their ears, they're not being silly, they just are finding it really difficult with the noise level, and we might just need to all work quietly to calm down and lower our voices. Including children in our games and explaining the rules clearly so that they know how to play and join in is really important. How do you think children with autism might respond if the rules of the game change halfway through? They would probably be quite upset. And always ask a teacher or another adult if someone becomes distressed or upset or worried, and they can help you. Hello, Romsey Abbey. I'm going to share with you a story now. This story is called Through the Eyes of Us, and it's by Jan Roberts. This is me. Ooh. And my friend Martha. There they are. This is Martha's tortoise. He's called Arthur. And this is Piglet. He is my favourite toy. Martha and I are the same age. And we're great friends. We are similar in lots of ways. and very different in others. We are both autistic. We are like two different colours sitting on a beautiful rainbow. I like that idea. Martha and I love school. When I see my friends in the morning, I get excited and wave my hands in the air. This is how I like to say hello. I love listening to my teacher reading to us in class. I'm learning lots of new words. I repeat the words I like the sound of. Martha enjoys pretending to be the teacher in class and copies what she's saying. Martha talks a lot and asks a lot of questions in school. She sometimes asks the same question over and over and over again. Her teacher writes down the answers for her on paper to help her remember. I have a lovely lady who is my support teacher. She helps me during lessons by making things easy for me to understand. She is very patient and asks me one question at a time. She knows it takes me a little while to understand the words and for me to come up with an answer. My teacher uses picture cards when she talks to me, as I understand more by looking at images. Pictures make more sense to me than spoken words. Dinner time is my favourite time of the day, especially when it's spaghetti. I enjoy eating with my fingers and making a mess. Martha likes many different foods too. She can eat and eat and eat. But her mummy and daddy must watch her and make sure she doesn't eat too much. She doesn't really know when she's full. Martha and I both love touching things. This gives us a stimulation that we both enjoy. When I go shopping with my mummy and daddy, I love wrapping clothes around my body and burying my face into the material. It makes me feel calm and warm. Martha likes to run to people and touch their clothes. She enjoys feeling the different textures of the fabric. Her mummy made her a lovely, brightly coloured bag out of all types of material, so when she gets the urge to touch something, she can touch the bag. What a good idea! So Martha can still do what she needs to do to feel those senses, but she doesn't touch other people, and that's really good because that makes her safe, doesn't it? I like exploring the outdoors, touching slimy slugs and stinging nettles and prickly holly. You may not like the feeling, but to me it's interesting. After a long day, I still enjoy jumping up and down on my trampoline in the garden. It makes me feel free. Mummy and Daddy say I am very busy. I don't realise I'm tired, and at night time I don't want to go to bed. I run around the house to keep myself awake. Martha knows when she's tired and will take herself to bed. She has a bedtime routine and must kiss her mummy and daddy on their forehead before she goes to sleep. Like Martha, I like routine. Every night I have a nice warm bath with a few drops of lavender oil to relax me, and after my bath, my mummy gently massages my feet and hands. I love bath time. When I finally fall asleep, I sleep right through the night, but I find it difficult to get up in the morning. Once we wake up in the morning, we are ready to take on our next adventure. Look out, world. Here we come. And there are the girls. It says this book was written by John Roberts about his beautiful daughter Kaya and her good friend Martha. The two girls are of a similar age and are both autistic. It is hoped that by reading this book, people can have an insight into their lives of someone on the autistic spectrum and understand that everyone is different and how much joy they bring to their friends and family. As I think it's really important to think about how we're all different and how much joy we bring to each other's lives. So this week I'd like you to think about the things that make you special. What makes you you? What are your talents? What are you good at? What do you find really tricky? Are there any situations like loud noises or crowded spaces that you find really difficult? And how can we all help each other with those things? Thank you so much for listening to my worship, and I'll be back next week thinking more about how we learn brilliantly. I'll blow out the candle.